Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast interview here. I'm Chip Brown with Horns247.com. Very excited to be joined by Terry Bowden, head coach of the ULM Warhawks, former Auburn head coach, former Akron head coach, son of Bobby Bowden. Terry, thanks so much for taking a little time with us.
Chip, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity and always enjoy talking with you and this organization and just the upcoming game with Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think people, they look at Louisiana-Monroe and they need to look a little closer to see that Terry Bowden is coaching.
Well, I wish that would be. I wish this all came down to something is like that, but it doesn't. They still probably have better coach than I am. But you know what? It's an exciting game for us to be playing at a venue like the Texas Stadium in a town like Austin in front of 100,000 people plus. And that's an exciting part. The negative is that you're getting paid a lot of money to play a team that's a lot better. And you got to have a lot of things go your way. But done this a long time. I've been on both sides of this coin, and we're going to bring a good, solid football team in there to play.
Terry, I want to we'll get to the
right.
your team and everything, but you spent 10 years as a college football analyst, so you've always had great thoughts about college football in general, and you were at Auburn from 93 to 98, and now you're coaching in the age of the transfer portal and NIL. How has it changed for a head coach?
It's obviously the portal and the NIL combined at one time makes it very hard to manage your roster. I think that's something that I don't have any history to fall back on. Okay, what do I do in January? What do I do in February? What do I do in May? You never seem to have your recruits in. You never seem to have your roster solidified. And so it's a new thing. And but I've been through so many my first year of playing football in West Virginia, 1974, I want to say that it was still unlimited freshmen, or maybe 4 or 5 years. It was, I know Johnny Majors won a national championship at Pittsburgh. He had 93 freshmen he signed, Tony Dorsett and all that. So we've gone from that to 45 to 25. We've gone to so many different things with Prop 48s and all the things that we've done And so, what I tell my coaches, all we can do is do a better job of handling it than the rest of the guys in our conference. We can't make it change. We can't make it better. We can't make it worse. I don't think we can even determine now whether it's going to really even hurt football. It may be a little different in managing our teams, but our job here at ULM is to do a better job managing than Lafayette, than Southern Miss, and that's all we can do. And don't worry about things we can't control.
Terry, I want to take you back to Auburn for a second because you went 11-0 your first year at Auburn in 1993. I think you had 46 wins through 5 seasons, and then the 1-5 start in 98, and you stepped down, and it came after a column about the alums at Auburn lacking patience after you went. I mean. And Terry, from that point on, Auburn's gained this reputation as this just unreasonable place to coach. And there was craziness there again last year. What is it about that place? Is it the big money guys? What is it that makes it so hard to
well, you know what it's, I would imagine that Texas, the politics are pretty big. I know it's that way at probably LSU, it's Alabama. When the bigger the school and the more people that have influence are involved, the more you better keep them happy and not on the other side. And as I look back at Auburn, I can think of nothing but good feelings about all the success we had there during those times. Those were the most successful first 5 years of any coach. But Tommy Tobeville ended up facing the same thing. Gene Chizik the same thing. Gus Miles the same thing. So I think when you've got situations where, one, it's so important to people that love the school, because I don't know that I want to place Auburn in too much of a different situation than a lot of schools. I know if you don't win at the big schools, there is no bigger school than Texas. There is no bigger school historically and tradition. You've got to be successful, and if you don't keep the right people happy, it may not happen. But I want to say that I wouldn't change it for the world. Having been at Auburn, I was the youngest head coach at 36. We didn't just win 11 straight. We won our first 20 straight in the SEC. I'd probably make about $100 million contract now. I got a new watch while I was there. But you know what? When we split up, I went to work for ABC, got to work with John Saunders in Times Square, 10 years. So I had 15 years as a head coach. I had 10 great years of having more fun than you can ever imagine, broadcasting and doing studio shows in New York. And now I'm on my 11th year coming back in my 27th year. So I've been really blessed just to be where I am at 66 years old coaching. So it's been fun. Those were great times. It's almost like that was a different life.
Who was the most talented player you coached in your time at Auburn?
Takeo Spikes. You remember Takeo?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
he was
that neck.
Yeah, but neck. I mean, he had shoulders up to his helmet.
Yeah.
He was a first round, eighth guy picked first round as a middle linebacker. Usually those guys come out on third downs, but he was a 4.5 40. I thought he's the only guy that I've ever coached that could have played NFL ball right out of high school. He was that talented. May have been specialty only, but he was that good of a player. Now, I didn't, I was at Division III, Division II, Division I AA, Division I Group of Five, and Division I Power Five. So I've been half my career at lower levels where you don't have as many NFL players. And I've had Willie Anderson. I've had great offensive linemen who spent years and years in the pros. But I've had as many players that I considered great team guys. Jimbo Fisher was the very first quarterback I ever signed out of high school.
Is that right?
Still the best. Yeah, I signed him in 1983. He was my first quarterback. He worked for me 14 years. A.J. Milwee was with me 7 years, the year quarterback coach there at Texas. He was a great quarterback. We don't think about all the great players like A.J. and Jimbo because they were at smaller colleges. But there's a lot of those out there and that I appreciate over the years.
Well, tell us about A.J. Milwee. What stood out about him?
Great teacher, first of all, great person, great human being. And I think it's very important to me to surround myself with coaches who have the right type of mentorship that they can give to the players, the right type of leaders, the right type of character, great wife, great family guy, great dad and mom, great family, perfect guy. I saw the Manning quarterback is there coming in. And I thought, well, that's the perfect guy because AJ's the perfect coach. I would say more cerebral than visceral. Jimbo Fisher and Damian Craig were a couple of my quarterbacks at A&M. I know y'all don't want to talk about A&M, but I think of Jimbo as being a very, very visceral, very gut feeling type of play caller. AJ, a very cerebral. I think he's much more cerebral, and I think that's kind of what a quarterback needs a lot of times.
That's fantastic stuff. Okay, so your dad is the legendary Bobby Bowden. Do you find yourself uttering Bobby-isms in your day-to-day life? And if so, what are like your favorites?
Everything's a Bobby Bowdenism. You got to remember, I played for him at West Virginia. He left me as a little old walk-on with the next coach for a couple of years. Then I went down and GA'd for him, and I've been a head coach ever since. And I studied him everywhere I've ever went. And so almost everything I've got is a Bobby Bowdenism, just from, if you got good leadership, you don't have injuries, you got a chance to have a good year, and, but I think it's just the way he treats people. I don't know if it's one thing in particular, other than the dadgummits that we all miss. He just passed 1 year ago this past week, and I miss him every day. But I think the funniest thing was for the last 20 years, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd get up about 5, and we talked every morning for the last 20 years. And every morning we would leave the conversation. He would have the final word. He'd say, "Hey, Terry, you say something good about me, and I'll say something good about you." And we would laugh because I'd be speaking in one state, he'd be speaking in the other state, and that was his way. Hey, you got my back, I got yours. Because in this game of football, we always got somebody getting on us pretty bad.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for sure. And Tommy, I mean,
yeah.
You're the eldest, right?
No, Tommy's 2 years older now.
He was my bad.
He was my coordinator at Auburn. Then he went on to Tulane and went undefeated, and then went on to Clemson. But Tommy retired at 55 and is enjoying every minute of retirement. I don't know what to do if I retire. But Tommy is he never had a losing season at Tulane and Clemson. In the 90s, you talk about a fun decade. Do you know in the decade of the 90s, in 93, I went undefeated National Coach of the Year. In 98, Tommy went undefeated Tulane National Coach of the Year. And in 99, my dad went undefeated National Coach of the Year and National Champion. So long time ago, all my players were not even born when I was at Auburn. So maybe the first time they ever hear that.
How about that? How about that? And it's so funny. Arch Manning's high school coach played for Tommy at Tulane on that undefeated team.
My last full year at Auburn in the SEC championship, we lost to Tennessee on a late touchdown pass from Peyton Manning to Peerless Price. So I was coaching against Peyton, the dad or uncle of Arch, in my last full year at Auburn.
Okay, we're making our way to your time at ULM, but you were an analyst for Dabo for 2 years at Clemson before you took the ULM job.
Right.
So tell me about that. How did that come about, and what did you get out of that experience?
Great opportunity. The analyst situation has changed since I began coaching, or even the last 10 years. And lately, we all noticed that coaches that maybe get their contracts get bought out and they've got money, they'll say, I want to go be an analyst somewhere and keep my name in the hunt, to keep myself active. And here I'm 63 years old, and that's a perfect coaching age. That's not a good hiring age. That's the truth. And so I said, I got to go jump on as an analyst somewhere. And of course, Dabo was at Alabama as a player when I started at Auburn, and I've known him forever. And then my brother hired him, and then my brother recommended him. So I thought I could pull in a marker there and be an analyst. But you know what? When I got there after spring ball, he said, Coach, I don't have any analyst positions open, and you can't volunteer. Because I told him I could volunteer. I got my own salary. I got my own benefits. He said, I don't have an analyst position left open. You'd have to be a student or be a paid salary. I have nothing. And I said, okay, I'll go back to school. So, I went back and applied for grad school at 63 years old. And during my 2 years as an analyst at Clemson, I got my master's degree at Clemson just so I could stay in the hunt and coach a little bit more. And then I enjoyed sitting in the back of the room, because for about 25 years, I sat in the front of the room every meeting. And I enjoyed watching and studying Dabo and how Clemson's been able to build that program. And that was interesting, because I really was more focused on not learning how to call plays or do that, but watch how he managed a football team and how he managed a team that was really took Clemson to another level.
Yeah, that's funny. It's what Gary Patterson told me, that, now that he's a special assistant to Sark at Texas,
right,
he likes being able to walk out of the meetings and say, well, I hope Sark can solve that problem. Not my problem.
I promise you, I know exactly what he means. There was nothing more fun than to sit in the back room when all your life you sit at the head table and everything falls on you. I enjoyed having someone else take the blame.
Okay, so
credit.
Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll take a quick break with Terry Bowden, head coach of the ULM Warhawks. And if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we'll roll on. So, Terry, the ULM job comes open. They're 0-10, the previous year, and you say, I want that job. Yeah. What led to you taking that job?
All right. First of all, when you got a pandemic in the middle of it, you're 64. By that time, you're 65, and you're wondering what jobs will even come open. You can't get offered a job till it comes open. And in 2015, ULM was hiring a coach. They flew up and talked to me, and I almost left then. They really were trying to get committed to building their program, but they just couldn't. It just didn't work out. The salary was we couldn't come up with the right figures, and nobody's fault. So I'd already knew a lot about them. But when I finally, so I knew the area of the country where they recruited. You got to remember, East Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi is not a bad recruiting area. And I knew all about the league. I've coached against most of the people in the Sun Belt, and I knew enough about ULM. So when they called, and I said, this may be the only opening that comes after me. And I've said this, if you're going to take over a job, and everything I've taken over has to been a turnaround job where you turn one around. I said, you might as well be a 0-10. I don't want a 1-9 team. I want to take over an 0-10 team and see where we can go. So we had the biggest turnaround last year in the conference. The 0 to 4 wins was the biggest turnaround. So it's, hey, you know what? You don't want to go 11-0 again like I did at Auburn because there's nowhere to go but down. So I learned a lesson at Auburn.
Well, you had Rich Rodriguez as your offensive coordinator. His son was one of your quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You got Vic Koenning as your defensive coordinator now. We know him from his days at West Virginia. He was putting together great defenses at West Virginia. I mean, your Rolodex is about as good as it comes, Terry.
Well, you have to be. First of all, group of 5, your coaches make just enough money to be high on everybody's list because you don't have to outbid anybody for the coaches. And I've got some pretty good ones. Now, Vic Koenning, you mentioned West Virginia. He was my brother's coordinator at Clemson. He's twice been coordinator at Troy, Kansas State. He's been several places. He's been very successful. I've known him since he was a coordinator for my brother at Clemson. But twice he was at Troy, and twice they had the number 1 defense in this conference, number 1 or 2. And I know he can coach. And so I was glad to get him this time around and was thrilled about that. Matt Koenning, my new offensive coordinator, he was offensive coordinator here for 4 years. So they had great offense at that time. So, you know what? If anything, I'm fortunate of when we lose a coach, I've got coaches or players that play for my brother, my dad, or I that are looking for jobs. And so I think I've got a pretty good Rolodex, like you said. But that's also something that you got to expect at a group of 5 school. If you get good coaches, you're going to lose them.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And so let's get to your team now. You've got 8 starters back on offense, 4 starters back on defense. What do you like most about your team, and where do you have some work to make up here in camp?
Well, I mean, I think we're getting closer to being competitive in the Sun Belt Conference. We won 3 games in the conference last year, and we were competitive in several others. We led in 8 games. So I think the biggest thing is that from an overall team standpoint, offense, defense, we are getting level talent that matches up with the level of our conference. We had to upset people to win games last year, and I think we're going to have to do that again this year. But overall, I think I don't think we've got a bunch of first-day draft choices. You know, we may have a free agent or 2, but we don't have any first-day draft choices. We've got good, solid Sun Belt players, and they have really bought in. They're great. I enjoy coaching them. After 25 years, I want guys that I like, and I want them to work hard, and I want them to play hard and to be mentally tough, but I also want them to be good character guys. And I've had some great players that I didn't like very much. I didn't tell them that.
Yeah.
But I really like the quality of our guys. And I don't know what, we've got Texas, and 2 weeks later we got Alabama. So I don't know what will happen in those games. I've coached in enough of these kind of games, but I know that if we go out there and play our best, don't get beat up and hurt, I think we're going to have a very, very competitive team in the Sun Belt Conference.
Where do you, what would you consider the strength of your team, and what's your biggest concern?
Well, I take offense. I think we got 2 quarterbacks back that are very, very solid Sun Belt quarterbacks that can run and throw well enough to be successful in the Sun Belt. And the depth at our receivers and running backs is our best depth. And so I think that, but again, we lost some linemen. Willie Tyler from Texas was our best lineman, and he left and went to Rutgers. So our best guy was a guy that couldn't play for Texas or didn't play a lot for Texas. So we've got to shore up that offensive line. We've got some good portal transfers. We'll be solid. I would think if there's going to be a mismatch or a chance where we'll come in there and Texas will be at a real talent level, that'll be to me that'll be one of the areas we have to really be concerned about, just making sure we can protect the quarterback and we can run our offense to some degree. Defensively, we got a lot of new faces, but Vic Koenning, we brought in some more portal transfers on defense. And when you got a guy that's in his 60s, that's been a coordinator all his life, I've kind of watched him bring in guys that not quite sure how they fit in, but he's sure. He's sure how they fit in. He knows the kind of players he needs. And so I just feel good about the staff that I have. Otis Mounds, my new secondary coach, he played for me at Auburn. Ricky Logo, a great defensive line coach, who was at Washington State, has worked with Coach Koenning before that, and Ron West, our linebacker coach, is been around a good bit too. So anyway, defensively, I like I like the leadership and the fact that Coach Koenig has been he's been in the battles. He's battle tested. He can react under pressure. I think he can put his players in the best position to be successful, and then maybe more importantly, during the game, make the quickest on-field adjustments to give us a chance. And that comes only with a coordinator that has some history, that's been there before. And so I think that's going to give us a chance to be a lot better. Our best player is our middle linebacker, Zach Woodard. He is a very, very good Sun Belt player and has a knack for getting around the ball.
The definition of a good coach is someone who can solve a problem quickly.
Right. Absolutely. I think on game day, you're really talking about that. Now, I spent 20 years, my first years about calling plays. And so your ability to react quickly on game day is the most critical thing. And people think, well, you had a great game plan. Well, the defense has put in a different game plan while you're putting in your game plan. And so by the first series, you're playing a whole different scheme than you thought you were going to have. And the key to being successful is to make not halftime adjustments, but every series adjustments to the little things that they're doing. And so I've got a couple of coordinators at least have got some background in that. And if I don't keep my nose out of it, I'll probably add some of the offense. AJ knows what a headache that is because he was my coordinator. He probably hated having me on that headset too. But I think game day adjustments, being able to have been in the trenches, been in the wars before, allows you to make those kind of adjustments. Now at Texas, we may not have enough bullets in our gun, even if we do make those adjustments. But that's the last thing in the world we should be laying our heads on our pillow worried about, because we can't change that.
Yeah. Well, AJ was your coordinator at Akron.
Mm.
Another one of your turnaround projects. You won a MAC championship at Akron. Everywhere you go, you get it going, Terry, and that's exciting for the folks there in Monroe.
Yeah, you know what, and I think, and I believe absolutely that we'll be competitive with this conference, and we'll be in the conference championship at some point. The Western Division Western Division. I've always said when I was at Auburn, there is no division tougher than the Western Division of the SEC. There is not, and there still is not. But the Western Division of our conference, Texas State, Arkansas State, South Alabama, Southern Miss, Troy, everybody had losing seasons except Lafayette. So we do have a wide open division. So really there's some excitement here because we're one of a bunch that are trying to get their program back on top.
Have you been to Cormier's in Monroe?
Oh, you can't go for crawfish?
Yeah.
You got to go to Cormier's. I'm going to tell you, great place. If you don't like crawfish, you better fake it till you make it. They got crawfish in your grits. They got crawfish in your dadgum. Everything you do's got crawfish. And so if you don't like it, you better pretend that you do, because you ain't one of them if you don't like crawfish.
That's right. Okay, so what give me a John Saunders story. You were 10.
Here's my favorite one. I tell people, you're a broadcaster. When I went to New York, as an analyst now, and I've been a head coach 15 years, and I've been a son of a coach since I was born. And you think you know a little bit about football, and now I'm going on live television in New York City in Times Square, and it ain't taped, it's live. And I don't care how many times you come out of that tunnel, you get nervous going live. And he'd had situations in the prior times where his partner would just go blank. He'd go blank on national TV. He said, Terry, let me tell you, there are three things are going to happen to you in this business, and you got to follow the rules. He says, the first thing you need to do when you go live TV is say something. If I ask you a question, just say something. He said, and then when you get good, you'll say something important. And he said, if you last long enough in this business, you'll say the most important thing. And you know what? Say something important, and say the most important thing. Not a bad rule for a lot of people in a lot of businesses. Not bad for a hockey player. He was a hockey player. Great hockey. He loved during the fall, he would be doing hockey games. He was the play-by-play for the Toronto Raptors. He did hockey. He loved hockey, and he did college football all at the same time. Wow. Well, okay, real quick on Willie Tyler. Yeah. I mean, what kind of player was he? Because we never saw him play at Texas. We know he was great for our level. I don't know I think when you play for Texas in the league y'all play in, he has to keep his adrenaline up a notch and play with great intensity. But he played with it. He was growing into that. He was growing into that. I'll say this: he was 6'6", 315, 320. We lost 3 players after spring ball. Chip, we lost a left tackle who was 6'6". We lost a defensive end who was 6'5", and a cornerback that was 6'1". Those are the most difficult things to find, and they all went Power 5. And we'll see if they start, because they may be depth. But I've almost decided I'm going to sign 6'2" tackles. No matter how much I want a 6'5" guy, because if they develop and are any good, we're going to lose them. They're going to go in the portal. So anyway, Willie, he was a really good player for us, and he's a good person. But maybe Rutgers will be a great place for him to see if he can get back in the Power 5 and see what he can do.
Well, Terry, I could talk to you all day. I mean, you've got that. You were fantastic as a college football analyst, by the way.
Well, thank you.
And everywhere you've been, you've won. So I think Texas fans they're paying attention now that they know Terry Bowden is the head coach of the ULM Warhawks.
Tell them not to pay too much attention till the second game.
Well,
we
listen,
don't want to get blown out. We just want to come in there and make a great showing, and we'll play hard. We'll make a great showing. But and we're thankful. A lot of people don't realize, Chip, that when it talks to the big money in college football, the only way we group of fives can get it is if the Power 5 school give us a game, because we make almost $2 million playing Texas. And yes, we want to win when we play Power 5 schools, but we also need that money to make our budgets work. And so it's a great way of kicking that TV money down to the group of 5 level.
Well, I don't know how much you've looked at Texas, but I guess I should ask you for a thought on Texas, Steve Sarkisian, what the Longhorns trying to come back from a 5-win season themselves.
Well, I think if you look at Nick Saban, his first year at Alabama, you'll see a lot of times where a great coach, the first year they've got to make decisions, they've got to change what they're doing, and the results don't show. The biggest success comes from year 1 to year 2. I see great talent. I see him competing for the conference championship. And I see a team that we're going to go in there hoping they do things that would. I mean, we beat Northwestern the year they played for the Big Ten championship when I was at Akron. We had 2 pick sixes. You have to have something like that. But I would think if those guys will just continue to stay steady and follow the plan, I would expect to see the Texas back in the hunt for the conference championship this year.
Well, listen, we sure do appreciate you taking some time with us. And we'll see you in Austin on September 3rd. Thanks so much, Terry.
Thank you for having me. Take care now.
All right. For Terry Bowden, I'm Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you at horns247.com. Stay safe and keep the faith.